Hello, heathens, and welcome to Spinning the Wheel podcast with me, your verdant and floral host, Megan Angus. And this week we will be discussing Beltane season, new moon, solar eclipse in Taurus, lunar week 13. Hey everybody, happy Beltane. Oh my god, we made it to Beltane. Slash, how the is it already May? What happened? There was like several large amounts of time that seem to have we've already run through them. I don't understand that part. But hey, it's Beltane. So hashtag healthy lusty thrusty. At least the humpery is here, right? In theory. Or for some of us. Enjoy, those of you who have that. But here we are. We've made it to Beltane, and this is the season and the holiday and the Sabbath that kicks off the overground journey portion of the year. And if you missed it, our Beltane class is live. You can watch that on YouTube. You can watch that here, actually, wherever it is that you are consuming this podcast. You can also watch it on my website. And in that class, if you have not joined us for one of the Wheel of the Year classes before, in that class, we are going to talk about, or we did, actually, this already happened. We talk about the customs, the traditions, the history, the folklore, the deities, the practices, the ritual forms, spellcrafting, all of that good stuff that pagans, heathens, witches, and other polytheists get up to here at Beltane at this time of year. Talk about the astronomy, the astrology, and the tarot, and so much more. There's meditations, there's guides for building an altar, all of that good stuff. And you can find all of that in the video that, as I said, has already gone live. And if you want even more support through this Sabbath season, join my Patreon. At the $9 level and higher, you get access to the Patreon bag of holding, wherein you will find the workbook that accompanies the 7 to 8 week class, the calendar that we are referring to in all of our podcasts with all the holy days and heliacal risings of fixed stars and all of that good stuff, and so much more. As well as like exclusive things. So, yes, thank you so much to all of my patrons who support me and make it possible for me to do these classes and do these podcasts for free. So thanks, guys. Pretty fucking badass of you. If you want to know more about this, you're like, wait, what? There was a Beltane class? I totally missed that. How? You can sign up for my irregular newsletter through my website. I probably don't post there as often as I should, but I also don't want to spam people. But you will get announcements when classes are coming up. All of that good stuff. I hope Beltane season is settling in nicely for you. For me, we talked about this a couple weeks ago in the podcast. For me, Beltane season really starts when the sun enters Taurus, and that was April 20th. So I think of April 20th through April 30th as kind of the pre-funk for Beltane. And then, of course, the eve of April 30th is when Beltane officially kicks off. So I hope that this moment feels ripe for you. I hope that there is even with all of the anxiety and the pressure and the stress of 2022, I hope that there is something enticing that is beginning to reveal itself in this season for you. Okay. So in theory, I say this every time, but in theory, this podcast is going to be like an addendum to the class because we talked about a lot of stuff in the class. We go over a lot of stuff. And particularly, a lot of the things that we talked about in the class apply to this week. Because, of course, Beltane is this week. So we talk about that. We talk about the adjunct holidays and festivals, past and present. And we talk a bit about the astrology as well as the eclipse. But we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the stuff that we couldn't spend too much time on in the class. We're going to bring a magnifying glass to some of those subjects. So we're going to talk about a few things in this. In theory, it will be a shorter episode. Again, I know I always say that, and then it's an hour and 45 minutes. Just how about this intro alone is far too long. So let's get into it, shall we? Okay. There are links for everything in the description of this podcast, as usual. To support this podcast and all of the work that I do, join my Patreon. Thank you so much to my patrons. You can leave a review on your podcast service wherever you listen to this, and if you are feeling especially hedonistic, you can give it a thumbs up or a 5-star rating, 5 being an extremely occult number. All right. That's enough of that. Let's get into the actual whatnottery, shall we? Okay. Beltane season witches work. What are we talking about in this season? We are moving out of the initiatory, curious, explorative energy of Aries and Ostara season, and we are now moving into something that is slowing down a little bit more certain of itself, and a little bit more interested in the physical expression of the stuff, the thing, the whatever it is that we've been working on. So Beltane season witches work, fertility, fecundity, and action. We are fertilizing, or we are being fertilized, in all of the metaphors, right? I shouldn't have to say that, but I'm going to say it. We are creating fecundity, or we are utilizing the fecund nature of the environment or the people or the situations around us. And we are moving into action. Again, Ostara season and Aries season, we're curious, we're initiatory, we're basically kind of summoning our sacred vision for whatever it is that we're going to try to accomplish in this magical year, in this solar year that's rolling forward. And so here, as we move into Taurus season, which is a fixed earth sign, Beltane says, okay, those are great ideas. Those are great visions. Let's see some manifestation. Let's see some actual substantial physical world product from all of these great ideas and all of this inspiration that we've had. Give me something I can eat, that I can touch, that I can smell, that I can hold, something. That's what this energy really wants from us in Beltane. For our global themes, as we look at the various holidays, past and present, around the planet, we see festivals that are recognizing surging power, fertility, and exchanging energy within opposing systems. And so the dual concept of sex and death, very potent here at Beltane. Again, we want to remember that across from us on the wheel is Samhain, our pagan and heathen brethren and sistren and siblings, kins, on the opposite side of the planet. They are celebrating Samhain, or they are about to celebrate Samhain at this time of year. So right here in the heart of everything is sex and death. There is a real heavy emphasis on binary imagery, duality, two of something, and those two things are opposing. And this is important for us, and I don't want us to get hung up on it, okay? Because here's why. I have found that, over the many decades, the thousands of years I've been studying modern paganism and modern Wicca, there is a very heavy emphasis on duality imagery, binary imagery here, especially at Beltane. There is such a heavy emphasis on the image of man and woman getting together to have sex to make human babies, right? That whole thing, not just parts of it, but the whole thing. Man plus woman equals baby child. Okay, lovely. And also, our species needs that, thanks to the people who engage in that stuff consensually to make future generations. Thanks. Not for me. Not my work to do. But where I'm going with this is not just like, oh God, there's breeders here. We love you. We love you. But to say that at the beginning, in my opinion, at the beginning of Beltane season, we work with this duality or this binary idea, partly because the starkness of the two halves of the year is so obvious to us at Beltane. That's the point of the holiday, is to show we are leaving that half of the year and we're moving into this half of the year. Halves, dual, two, right? Binary. So the year is divided in half for a lot of these cultures, not all. And so for a lot of these cultures, the idea of the binary, though they were not using that terminology, is paramount. It's the idea of this and that, and the friction of these two things rubbing up against each other and changing places. We talk a lot about that imagery in the class. But here's what I want to say is that duality, that binary idea, evolves. We don't stay there in Beltane. And I feel like a lot of pagan literature and like ritual focus and spell focus really emphasizes the idea that in Beltane we absolutely do stay in the binary. It's about the god and the goddess, the man and the woman, the penis, the vagina. And these are all lovely things, right? But in my opinion, as Beltane evolves into Gemini season, because Gemini, of course, rules the last 4 weeks of Beltane, we don't want to forget that. For me, that duality becomes a plurality. And it's almost to me like we would have shown you the plurality, but you couldn't handle it. So we just gave you two to kind of see how you dealt with that, and you seem to do good. So here now you can enjoy the multiverse. You can now enjoy the spice and variety of life. We didn't know if that was going to blow you away before. And, clearly we can look around in our world today. Some people cannot handle living outside of the binary. Yeah, I said it. So, the gods and goddesses also being like, I don't know if he can handle that. Like, I don't know if they can handle that, right? It's not so far-fetched. And that's really kind of how I see Beltane season. Is it starts out with me defining myself very strongly and finding my opposite and rubbing up against it. But then after a while, understanding I contain multitudes. And so my quote unquote opposite must also contain multitudes. And we will see an emphasis on that type of imagery and symbolism the deeper that we move into Beltane. Okay. I just wanted to really touch on that because I think it's really important. And I think we can get super stuck in one part of that convo and not make it to the rest of the convo. And it's so inherent for me in the work that we do in this season. It's so spicy and delicious. Nom, 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 nom. Variety. We loves it. Okay. All right. The only other thing I want to say before we get into the actual stuff of this week is, as of April 26th, we have entered what Jessica Lanyadoo refers to as the retro shade of Mercury's retrograde that will be occurring officially on May 10th. We've talked about it already in the last couple of weeks. We will talk about it more. But this is kind of like the preamble, again, the pre-funk, if you will, to the official Mercury retrograde that's going to kick off here. And for those of you who've been, taking notes and paying attention, Mercury retrograde. Mercury is the ruling planet of what sign? Gemini. Did we just talk about Gemini? We absolutely did. It covers the last half of Beltane. So in this Beltane season, we are getting multiple opportunities to really reflect on what are we trying to do in this season? And what are we trying to not do in this season? Okay. That is a hell of a preamble. Let's actually get into what is going on this week, shall we? Okay. Thanks for putting up with me, you guys. You're like, is she ever going to get to the actual thing? No, TLDR, no. I'm just gonna go off on sidebar after sidebar, honest to God. All right. Okay. All right, this week kicks off on April 30th, Saturday, with a new moon in Taurus that is also a partial solar eclipse. This is at 10 degrees of Taurus for here us for us here in the western part of the United States. It is 1:28 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day and into the evening for everybody else around the planet. Um, Nobody is going to be able to see this eclipse except folks that are in the southern half of South America. So this is not something that we are going to be able to observe here in North America. This eclipse moon is conjunct Uranus at 14 degrees of Taurus and is sextile Mars at 11 degrees of Pisces. And so I want to talk about this moon in a couple of different layers. First off, let's talk about what we're doing with a new moon. New moons are seeds. It is a start. It is a beginning of a process. And we get a new moon every month, sometimes two. I guess I should say we get a new moon every 29 and a half days. That's actually much more accurate. Month. Yes, that is where that word comes from. And so every month we're getting an opportunity to start or come back to a new process in ourselves that is, codified or, under the auspices of whatever sign the new moon is in. So last month we had our new moon in Aries, and that kicks off an entire year's worth of process around our sense of self, how we express that in the world, and all of the iterations of defining ourselves in the world. This month we have a new moon in Taurus. And so Taurus is like, how am I building things? How am I bringing that stuff into the physical plane? What's my process around that? What are my beliefs around that? What are my hangups and issues around that stuff? And so this is kicking off a year-long process for us on material, physical world issues, our needs, our fears, our hangups, our baggage, our goals, our dreams, our wishes, all of that stuff is going to get reviewed in one form or another over the next 12 months. And that's pretty potent work all by itself. But we want to remember that the nodes are now here in Taurus and the opposing sign, Scorpio. And so, we would have a new moon here every year. That's not new, but we don't always have the nodes here. And so we see that extra level of sort of celestial emphasis is kind of how I think of it, of like, our road signs in the sky, kind of putting on a couple of extra neon arrows and being like, hey, no, really think about this, do this work, please. This is important. Hey, pay attention. So with our new moon all by itself, right? It's a birth, it's incarnation, it's awakenings, it's beginnings. It is a seed in the dark. And so there is, something in our process where we are going to this rich black soil of the soul, and we are planting a seed there of some type, right? A metaphor, maybe we're doing it literally, maybe all of the above. And so just in and of itself, this is a time to initiate a new relationship or a new iteration of our process with the body and the physical plane. Like I said, all of our issues around that stuff, our hopes, our fears, our baggage, it's time to step up to that information. We have a lot of things happening in our world right now that are encouraging greed, fear, defensiveness, paranoia around physical territories, borders, around food scarcity and food access. How much is it for a gallon of gas, right? It's out of control. And then that poses the deeper question of, as a species, how much longer are we really going to be able to drive cars? Or is this a finite system, et cetera, et cetera? We can see how this conversation can really be very personal, and how it absolutely connects to the people that live around us, our community at large, the world at large. So it's heady stuff, it's deep stuff, and it's also things that I don't think that we're just going to wrangle and be able to, like, wipe our hands and fold up neatly and be like, well, I dealt with all of those issues in a single moon. Raha, don't know what I'm going to do for the next 28 days, but right? This is, again, the beginning of the process. In other words, we're sort of being encouraged to consider this from many angles over the course of the next year. That's really what a new moon is saying to us is, hey, this is going to be a thing for the next 12 months. We need to work on this. Or it's time for us to come back around and examine this, think about it, refine this, do some work here. So, uh, so that's a new moon, and that's a new moon in Taurus. But that is not the only thing that's happening here. We also have a solar eclipse. And as I've talked about in other podcasts and in the classes, I try to be very open minded about working with eclipses in terms of a magical spellcrafting ritual occult sense. There is a very long standing tradition in magic and astrology that you just don't fuck with eclipses. The end. That's the end of the paragraph and the chapter. There's nothing else to say. We don't mess with them, up to and including like actually being kind of fearful of them. You're not even supposed to look at them. You should just be, like burning incense on your altar and praying, or like averting your eyes or whatever. And I think that a lot of that comes from fear and misunderstanding in the past. I also think that that comes from magically sensitive folks being aware that there absolutely are really good times for doing magic, and there absolutely are times that are going to be difficult to get your goal through without it being affected or passed through a filter or changed or modified in some way. And so in the past, I have definitely encouraged a lot of free will, and I still encourage free will. I always will encourage you to listen to your intuition, and consider like what do I feel is right in this place for me at this time. All of that being said, this is a particular eclipse that I don't really encourage doing magical work. Why? Well, because we have had just like a lot of really, really spicy astrology. We still have some spicy astrology in front of us. We're about to step into a Mercury retrograde. As of today, April 29th, as I'm recording this, Pluto is stationing retrograde. We have had all of the planets moving in direct motion. And as of today, the retrograde season of the year kicks off. And Pluto stations retrograde, and it's retrograde half of the year. It's literally in retrograde for 6 months. So that's not that unusual, right? And that's not the only thing. This new moon is conjunct Uranus at 14 degrees of Taurus, and it's sextile Mars at 11 degrees of Pisces, which means that Uranus and Mars are like hanging out. Uranus and Mars, in the best of circumstances, is very like jackass energy. You know what I'm saying? Have you ever been friends with or known those people who are always like egging each other on to do the dumbest thing that either one of them can think of? Like, hey, what if I, sat in a wheelbarrow and you pushed me off the roof, and hopefully I'll make it to the pool in the backyard, right? Like those friends. Though maybe that's you. Maybe I'm friends. Maybe that's me. That's very Mars Uranus energy to me. Like when they get together, they're like, hey, let's flip tables and start fights and have a great time. And all of that can be super fun, right? Like who doesn't love, a quick trip to jail, but, or the hospital, right? Like me, I hate them both. Actually, let's not. But that's very embedded in the energy of this moon. And this is in the best of circumstances. Uranus is impatient, is impulsive. Mars is impatient. Mars is impulsive. And they both are like, let's do the stupidest thing right now. And if you have a whole bunch of bail money and fire extinguishers on hand, okay, cool, have fun. But if that's not what you're trying to do, this might be a moon that is best like, let me just stay home, let me keep to myself, let's keep it cute and chill in the house. Let me just like do some chores and kind of putt around and mind my business. But Megan, Beltane is the same day. It sure is. And technically, if we're going to be absolutely accurate about it, this new moon slash solar eclipse happens at about 1:30 in the afternoon, Pacific Standard Time, as I said. Beltane officially does not kick off until you can see the moon. Now, several hours later at sunset, as the moon rises, it still may be so new that you can't actually see it on the night of April 30th. If you can, as soon as you can see the moon, I say clearly the eclipse is over, the moon is back, this has been several hours, we're good to go. Take the day to calmly and quietly prepare or just chill out, enjoy yourself, or whatever. And then kick off your Beltane festivities at night when you literally can see the moon. And if you can't see the moon on April 30th, wait until May 1st. April 30th / May 1st are Beltane. So it is completely appropriate to wait until the next day and wait until you actually see the moonrise and then kick off your hedonistic, freaky lifestyle holiday, you absolute perverts. Okay. So this actually stretches into a longer conversation that I've had many, many times with you guys around the idea of the holidays actually being seasons and not restricting them to just a single day of celebration. Because, of course, this week we also have Solar Beltane, which we'll get into in a little bit. But don't feel like you have to celebrate on the second. I mean, the ancients were pretty good at calculating time, but they didn't necessarily have things mapped out to the second in all cultures at all times, right? If they were off by a day, we're going to be all right. If you need to wait a day, it's going to be okay. In fact, it might be beneficial. It might be better for you to just hang out, chill for the day, and kick everything off the next day. Again, you do what works for you. But if there was occasionally I'm going to recommend, yeah, don't fuck with this. It's a little spicy. Let's just leave it. Okay. Here's the last bit of what I'm going to say about this. For our lunar body work with a waxing moon in Taurus, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, and preparing for action the ears, the mouth, the teeth, throat, neck, and shoulders, and basically all of the processes of speaking and listening, uh, all ruled by Taurus. And for our plant body work, we are planting, transplanting, or grafting annual flowers and fruits and veggies that bear crops above ground. So your squash, your peas, your beans, your corn, all of that good stuff. Great time, great, fantastic, excellent, amazing weekend to be working on all of that good stuff. For dialing in on this work a little bit more, on this moon in particular, I would recommend studying with the Five of Pentacles and the Six of Pentacles. This new moon and solar eclipse is at 10 degrees of Taurus, and so that is the second decan of Taurus. That connects to the Six of Pentacles. You could also sit with the Hierophant and the Empress if you wanted to for like maximum Taurus energy. But think about those cards, the Five and Six of Pentacles, and think about them inverted because of this lunar eclipse. Think about, what beliefs you have inherited on these topics and that maybe don't serve you anymore. Examine the things that you feel like you are obligated to evolve into, that you are obligated to manifest in the world, and question that obligation. Question it. Ask, where is that feeling coming from, and why do I think I'm the one that's responsible for manifesting this thing? Is that really my job? Um, all of that good stuff. All of it. It's a lot. It's a lot of work, but you guys got this. I know you do. Okay. That's everything that I think I want to say about this new moon slash solar eclipse. So let's get into the rest of the week. Okay, I lied. No, I have more to say. It's not that much more, but this. Um, okay. This is on this moon. This is what I'm going to say. Sorry. On this moon, ways of working with this energy, as I always say for the Sabbats, but in this moon in particular, going out into nature and the wilder, the better. Really, really important, can be very healing. Um, if you have capacity to spend some time thinking about how humans are destroying the environment and destroying the climate and ecology, and what ways you could get involved in stopping that expression in humanity. Very, very potent work to do at this time. um, and that's usually the work that I suggest at this time of year for Beltane. But on an even deeper level, perhaps, new moon at Beltane or new moon in Taurus really insists on an exploration and a declaration, really, into the universe of bodily autonomy. In Taurus season, we seize the gumption. We take the right. We take in hand our right to bodily express ourselves however we need to, however we should, and however we want to. In this season, it is profoundly important that we bring into the physical plane who we are internally. And so, this particular Beltane season, and really all Beltane seasons, this is a fantastic time of year to engage in the holy act of supporting your trans brothers, sisters, family members, friends, lovers, community members, teachers, mentors, artists. Our trans community is abso-fucking-lutely under attack right now. And the insisting on the basic human right to embody our truth is fundamental, and it is incredibly holy work to engage in at this time of year. So if you want to really be a fucking heathen, if you want to really stir the cauldron, put up a trans flag at your work and be there to have the argument if somebody needs to hate about it. Be there to insist on visibility for your trans coworkers and your trans friends and your trans neighbors. Donate to some trans causes. I mean, there's a lot of terrible shit happening in our country right now. And again, these members of our community are under attack. Maybe I am speaking to you, my trans sisters and brothers. You are under attack, and I am so sorry. That's fucked up, especially as we walk into this season where, in theory, we should be celebrating the flesh. We should be celebrating the body and all of the miraculous things that it can do and be and look like, and what all the amazing shapes it can take and all the amazing smells it can make and all of the everything, right? We should be just free to celebrate the human body expression in its full capacity. And that is absolutely under attack right now. If there is ever a portion of the wheel, this is it. Where bodily autonomy is absolutely holy. So I had to get that off my chest. I had to say that. So yes, go into nature. Yes, stand up for your trans friends, your non-binary friends, and any people in your community. Um, Differently abled and handicapped people as well in our community who are expressing their truth through their bodies, their lived physical world experiences, that stuff. Um, okay. Now, is there anything else I want to say? Yes. I did mention working with the 5 and 6 of Pentacles. I have pieces up on my website that give nice, big, long descriptions of the 5, 6, and 7 of Pentacles as we move through Taurus season. Just head to my website and look for the Beltane link in the menu at the top, and it will take you to all of the Beltane writings that I have up and available on my website. Okay, now let's get into the rest of the stuff that's going on. Okay. But before that, how about an ad? Okay. If you love this podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you a bajillion billion times. See, the sirens are going off even as I say it. Thank you so much to my patrons. You guys don't even know. You don't even know. Thank you so much. You can sub for as little as $1 if you just think this podcast is dope and you want to support it. I don't run ads on the podcast, partly because I don't want to, and partly because I won't get paid even if I do. So screw them, man. You can sub, as I said, for as little as $1 or $5, even if you want to just support the podcast. And this is plenty of information. But if you want even more information, extra podcasts, extra videos, extra information about the Wheel of the Year, magical practices, tarot, etc., subbing at the higher levels, you get all kinds of cool free stuff. And at the even higher levels, you get free readings every month with me to be able to integrate all of this information into your personal life based on what's going on in your natal chart and all of that other good stuff. Join and change your life forever. Or, whatever. Thanks so much for the support. If you can't support financially, I completely understand because life sucks on Earth right now. It's too expensive for everything. Tell a friend, share it on social media, give it a thumbs up. If you're feeling especially hedonistic, you can leave a rating or a review. All right, that's the end of the ad. Let's get back to the podcast. Okay, now I'm going to skip us through a couple of days pretty quickly because, again, a lot of this information is in the Beltane class, so go watch the class if you want to know more about the holy days of this week, but we are still going to talk about a couple of them. Okay, May 2nd, it's a Monday. Our waxing moon enters Gemini. We're not going to get into all of the stuff. I'm just going to tell you this. For the lunar body work, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, preparing for action. The shoulders, the elbows, the wrists, the arms, the hands, and the armpits. And for our plant body work, we are harvesting. We're doing pest control. We are doing disease control. We are plowing and aerating the soil. We are weeding. We are pruning, all to support above ground growth in our plants. And our waxing moon work, we don't really need to get into it, partly because I feel like the influence of the Taurus moon, the eclipse, and the holiday itself is just a lot. I think it's kind of washing out whatever else the moon kind of has to offer until we come to another actual degree, which we will in just a couple of days. So there's that. Also on this day, May 2nd, we have Venus entering Aries. So all of our Venusian effects, all of our Venusian pursuits, that's the ways that we draw things to us, our aesthetic, our creative urge, all take on an Aries-like flair to them. So a little fiery, a little more spicy, a little more direct. You might find yourself being way more flirtatious and way more direct with people than you usually are. You might be way more comfortable dressing loudly, wearing wild colors, wearing some stuff you've never tried before. Venus in Aries is a really fantastic time for changing up your aesthetic. And again, trying things that you've wanted to try but haven't tried yet, all of that good stuff. Venus will be here for almost a month, not quite, but almost a month. So look at where you have Aries in your natal chart and know that Venus is passing through this part of the sky. This is true for everybody. I just heard somebody go, "Oh God." Relax. Venus travels fast. It's going to be fine. You'll be okay. Put a flower behind your ear and relax. It's going to be fine. Okay. Other things happening on May 2nd, we have from our uh, Muslim friends and ancestors, Eid. This is the end of the month of Ramadan, big old fancy celebration. From our Greek friends and ancestors, we have the month of Thargelion is kicking off. And there is a holiday named after that festival, which we'll get into in just a second. And then from our Roman friends and ancestors, Calendae Maius, aka the month of May, kicks off. And again, these kick off here May 2nd because we wouldn't be seeing the moon until about now. And so these months start with the moon rise. And there you go. Okay. May 3rd, Tuesday, we have a collection of holidays. Cruces from Mexico, specifically our Catholic Mexican friends. Rude Mass from our global Catholic friends, and Radonitsa or Rodonitsa from our Slavic friends and ancestors. And to me, these holidays are all kind of the same. Now, Cruces and Rude Mass they are focused on the symbolism of the wood used to build the cross. And yet we know always that that's not ever really the truth. Radonitsa, Rudanitsa, it is spelled all three ways, is dedicated to the Slavic god Rod. And so very interesting that we have this Rod Mass or Rude Mass from the Catholics, and Crucis, aka the wooden cross, from our Spanish friends. And this is very much an emphasis of that wood thrust hard yang energy that is embodied in Pan and Dionysus and Rod and so many other vegetative green man type characters that are surging with power at this time of year. Radnica is part of a big 10-day festival called Grudi Rozno, which we talk about in the class. That is a big old Slavic festival. Parts of it are dedicated to these vegetation gods, but the entirety of it is dedicated to magicians and witches and soothsayers, thanking them for the work that they do in community, and a time for those people to cleanse and bless and like recharge their tools that they do their magical work with. Okay, moving on to May 4th. We have our waxing crescent moon in Gemini actually happening at 29 degrees of Gemini at 2:53 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is the waxing crescent. And so the waxing crescent kind of brings in a little bit of a level of stress or friction to our process because we have to overcome the inertia of being the seed in the dirt, right? That's just, we're hanging out filled with potential, aka very similar to Aries and Ostara, right? Oh, I'm a seed. I've got all this potential. Woo! Now we're stepping into the, okay, but what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do with all of that potential? So the waxing crescent really asks us to step into that, like, what am I going to do with all of this potential? Feast of Saradwin and Brigid from our pagan friends and ancestors is the one holiday that I'm going to point out for this day. We see a variety of different light and dark goddess holidays happening at this, just briefly here at Beltane. And again, it's that emphasis of the dark half of the year and the light half of the year kind of coming together for a moment before they break apart and go off to their separate corners. Okay, May 5th is a Thursday. That brings us to a waxing moon in Cancer. It actually pops into Cancer the day before, but whatever. Let me say this, because again, we're not going to spend too much time on this moon. Let me say this. Waxing moon in Cancer, motherfucking fantastic for expansion magic of all types. Now, expansion magic, I'm using this as a like shorthand for any kind of magic that is pushing out into the world, that's making things be, versus contraction magic, which would be like banishing or undoing or ending magic, or magic that is about getting rid of something or diminishing something. Expansion magic for me is about building things up, creating things, initiating things, producing things. So for me, protection magic absolutely falls under expansion. Technically, we could say it's really applicable to both, because under the auspices of protection magic, we can build up our protection, we can build up our defenses, we can strengthen them during the waxing moon. And during waning moons, we can work on protection magic that diminishes threat, that diminishes attention, even, right? We can make things disappear on a waning moon as a form of protection magic. So it's really about our, how we want to approach it. But waxing moon in Cancer, May 5th is also um, the solar Beltane. So what is that? Well, solar Beltane is the day that Earth is exactly halfway between the spring equinox and summer solstice. For us currently, for those of us who practice Western astrology, that is when the sun is at exactly 15 degrees of Taurus. So 15 degrees of Taurus, the sun reaches 15 degrees of Taurus. That is solar Beltane. We are at the exact halfway mark between spring equinox and summer solstice. And we find, as we look back through time, I talk about this in the class, that we have a whole lot of old Beltane holidays centered on or around May 4th, 5th, and 6th, as opposed to April 30th, May 1st, right? Literally a week later, or just about a week later, all in alignment with solar Beltane. So, again, kind of speaking to that thing that I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast, don't lock yourself into thinking that Beltane has to be celebrated for 2 hours on April 30th night, and that's the entirety of Beltane. Or it's, May 1st is the only time. To me, no, we've got almost 8 weeks of Beltane energy to work through, and it's going to change shape and be a variety of different types of work for us to do. But here we have this beautiful waxing moon in Cancer that super duper supports building up, producing work. Um, and it's on our solar Beltane. Freaking perfect. Um, Also a really great moon for doing any kind of work around prosperity, abundance, supply. Like, can I have more of the stuff I need, please, on the physical plane, please? Great time for doing really straightforward work like that. But Beltane is a season where we do want to engage in protection work a little bit. We want to cleanse, we want to purify the old energy out. And and that's not just Ostara energy, right? Because we're still in spring, but it's really recognizing, again, coming back to that part of the convo, the two halves of the solar year, and that the dark half of the year has truly ended and has been sort of like sent on its way. And so we want all of that energy to move along with it. So this waxing moon in Cancer, very, very cool for that kind of work. Abundance work of any kind, bringing in more of what you need and want here on the physical plane, and also any kind of purification / protection for you, your family, your friends, your pets / other family members, your home, wherever that is, the property that your home is on, whatever that is. You won't be the only witch throwing a little salt around the apartment building. Okay, let me just say that. This is kind of how we roll in 2022. This is just how it is now. All right. For our lunar body work with the moon hanging out in Cancer, we are awakening, adorning, activating, preparing for action, and stimulating our breasts, our chests, our belly, and our lungs. Um, any adorning, any nourishment that those parts of our body need. Great time for this. And for our plant body work, we are transplanting, planting, and grafting annual flowers and fruit and veggies that bear crops above ground. As we said before, tomatoes, corn, watermelon, beans, zucchini, peas, all of that good stuff. Um, Solar Beltane, talked about it. Okay. May 6th, very quickly, waxing moon still in Cancer. No astrology of note on this day. And I'm not going to talk about any of those holidays. Okay, so let's move on to May 7th. This is the last day of our lunar week. Our waxing moon enters Leo. And Raven Caldera refers to this as the actor's moon. On this moon, we are considering what we give up for the approval or the applause of other people. Think about the ways that you dress, or the way you hold your body, or the way that you talk when you want to be perceived as sexy, or be perceived as serious, or be perceived as nice and good. Now, this is an important conversation to have with yourself. On a regular basis, anyways, just kind of checking in on that, being present with yourself in those choices. But also, as we come into the high part of the year with the weather improving and all this stuff, everybody's acting like the pandemic is over. It's not, clearly, but it is going to become a percentage amount safer to be outside and hanging out with people. Hey, you do you. If you're going to shows every night, you do you. But, I hope I get to party with you in the future. Please don't die. And please don't get anybody else sick. Okay. So, as we move out into this part of the year, this is something to think about, especially for us folks who've been like holed up for the last, several months or years. It's like, oh yeah, do I have clothes? How do I wear these? I don't even remember how to do that. So, you know, um, think about the ways that you dress and present that maybe are authentically you. Times when you're not necessarily being your authentic self, and why you make those choices, where that's, where is that helpful to you, and where is that hindering you in some way. The quote that I grabbed for this moon, I believe I got this out of the Moon Phase Astrology by Raven Caldera, is this: in the immortal words of Lily Tomlin, all my life I wanted to be somebody. Now I realize I should have been more specific. So that thing. And I think it's a great time to check in on this in our larger scope of building, embodying, being present in the physical world here in Taurus season, here in Beltane season. Who are you? Right? And how are you actually manifesting that in the physical world? And are you still holding on to woulda, coulda, shouldas that somebody else said, this is the way people are supposed to look, this is the way people are supposed to stand, this is the way people are supposed to present themselves in this place or in that place? That thing, right? We want to get as many of those hindrances out of the way as possible. Every time we come back around to Beltane season, we want to be diving in as deep as we can to embody the most authentic version of ourself. And respectfully, world, you can fucking deal with it. Okay? Okay. For our lunar body work with our waxing moon in Leo, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, and preparing for action the back, the heart, circulation, and blood. And as I say in every podcast, and I almost forgot to say it this time, but I'll say it now, I am not a doctor of the human corpus. I am a doctor of the cosmos. AKA just some lady yelling on the internet, do not listen to me for your health advice. Go to your trusted health advisor and find out if these things can and should work for you. But always, as I say, remember that you are more than welcome to also, or instead, work with the metaphor. So Are you carrying something on your back that maybe you need to put down? Is there something on your heart that maybe needs to be said or put down? That thing, right? Right. The metaphor still works for us. For our plant body work with our waxing moon in Leo, we are harvesting, we're doing pest control, disease control, plowing, weeding, aerating the soil, and pruning for above ground growth. And as I've said the last few weeks, as our weather changes, don't be surprised if you have some dormant little, gnats coming up out of the soil or who knows what. Maybe some spider mites. Not a big deal, easily taken care of. Just get on it. But as the weather changes, plants that were healthy 6 months ago suddenly may have like a really weird infestation that seemed to pop up out of nowhere. This is the time to be looking on the underside of your leaves and all of that good stuff. Okay. The only other thing that we're going to talk about is running from May 7th to May 8th from our Greek friends and ancestors, we have the ancient festival of Thargelia. And this is a multi-day festival that the month Thargelion is named for. Some sources have it listed as multiple days, some only 2. It was dedicated to the gods and goddesses Apollo, Artemis, Dionysus, and the Horae. And the Horae are the Greek representations of the seasons themselves, like the spirit of the season. And so the Horae are obviously like venerated and worshipped and dealt with throughout the year as the seasons progress. The main point of this festival was twofold. So on day 1, bad things were driven out, and there was a purification of the body, the home, all of the property and stuff, the land itself, property, purification, a cleansing of all of those things. But also, there were some type of sacrifice and or scapegoat elements to the day 1 part of the festival as well. And various sources list this in various ways. We have an author who is clearly super Christian from the 6th century who's like, they would stone people to death and they were humans and it was sacrificing humans. And then there was a bunch of academic other sources that are like, I don't know where that guy came up with all that stuff because we can't find that anywhere else. We know that there was a lot of like anti-pagan sentiment. Well, always, right? So then too. But there is a lot of evidence that either animals were picked and sacrificed. We see a lot of that in the ancient world. And or humans were picked and maybe they were sacrificed and or maybe they were just treated roughly, depending on how they responded to the festival. And then there are other sources that say there was never human sacrifice, but that people did end up the scapegoats, aka the pharmakoi. And the pharmakoi were meant, it's a word that describes the ugliest, but ugly does not specifically mean physical looks. It's much more of a character thing. Kind of, you have an ugly reputation in the community, and they became the scapegoats. And so they were sort of laden with figs and these symbols of like the yuck of the old year, and they would be driven out of the community. They would go through a festival, a variety of rituals, and then they were driven out of the community. And then the next day, it was all celebration and happiness. And so the first fruits offered, remember we were talking about a couple of different days this week, we have harvest. Yes, because in some of the hottest parts of the world, some of the tiny crops are already coming up with things. And so first fruits are being offered to Dionysus. There was processions with olive branches wrapped in wool. And something that I think is a really interesting side note, but not, it was a key element of this festival, was that people who had been adopted were formally received into their adoptive families. And there was a ritual done so that forevermore, that person was considered to be a blood relative, a blood descendant, and then eventually they would be, venerated as a blood ancestor, like a person who was genetically or whatever a part of the family. I don't have any information on the details of that ritual. I just think it's a very interesting thing to add into the mix of all of the other stuff that we're working with. Okay, my friends, that is our lunar week. So briefly, let's do the wrap up, shall we? Okay. All right, our lunar phases this week run from Taurus to Leo. So we are squarely sitting in the fixed sign energy that we find here in the center or the heart of spring, kind of holding it down as we step into Beltane season. For our astrology for this week, April 30th, we have, of course, our partial solar eclipse slash new moon in Taurus. We have Venus conjunct Jupiter in Pisces at 27 degrees. And then on May 1st, we have Venus in Pisces sextile Pluto in Capricorn at 28 degrees. We have May 2nd, Venus entering Aries. May 3rd, we have Jupiter in Pisces, sextile Pluto in Capricorn at 28 degrees. May 4th, we have Mars in Pisces, sextile Uranus in Taurus at 14 degrees. May 5th, we have the Sun in Taurus conjunct Uranus at 14 degrees. We also have Venus in Aries, sextile Mercury in Gemini at 4 degrees. And last but not least, on Saturday the 7th, we have the Sun in Taurus sextile Mars in Pisces at 16 degrees. Next month, both, I guess, we have stuff. I didn't look at what's coming up with next month. So, or next week for that matter. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Ah! Clearly, it's time for me to go spin around a pole and, weave some magic. Right? Yeah. That's it, my heathens. Thanks for hanging out. Again, there is support on my Patreon. There's also a ton of material to go through on my website, videos, podcasts, and writings. Drink deep, my friends, and ask yourselves, what does my garden grow? Blessed be, heathens.